So recently I've been talking about intraosseous, and usually we need now talk about the I.O. with the drill. A maroon type device that looks like this with the drill bit. Now, I've been teaching for a long time, and usually we do distal tibia right here, proximal tibia away from the fibula here. Some people actually go distal femur, right? Not including the patella. And then I teach and advocate the humeral. Now, there are devices that look like and are called sternal I.O.s. But if you ever watch videos, it's usually a healthy military man who are on the field, sick, likely something traumatic happens to them, and they advocate for something that gets inserted right here, right in the sternum. And when you hear it, it has several needles that penetrate the sternum, not designed to go past the sternum and into the mediastinum or heart or great vessels, but to stay within the bone marrow of the sternum. Woof! You hear that? Woof! Boom! And you're like, whoa! Now, I would never trust anyone, even a doctor, with a drill bit into my sternum. Right? If you do it, they usually try to have you have a sternal needle, not as long as like the humeral one, but it's use the power of your force of your arm. Hopefully you're not the strongest person in the world, but despite your strength, you drill into your chest. And then you put IV fluids or whatever you need. Now I'm talking about this is usually for trauma. And this is a patient likely pre-hospital, and patient likely not going to get a thoracotomy, right? You don't want your sternum moving or being distorted if you have one of these sternal I.O.s, getting a left-sided thoracotomy, like left-sided thoracotomy here, or a clamshell, right? Most likely this is something traumatic, something bad happened to the patient and he needed access. And for some reason they didn't get the humeral I.O., right? For cardiac arrest, I do not suggest this because you're going to interfere with CPR or injure yourself or injure the I.O., damage it by doing manual CPR or connecting it to a Lucas machine or some type of different type of mechanical CPR device. You guys understand? The device itself, to save a life, can be damaged in the process with a mechanical CPR device or CPR itself. And one thing, the chest wall of an elderly person or a person who's very frail, God forbid they have something called osteogenesis imperfecta, you do CPR. I do regular CPR, one-armed or two arms. There are times I feel the chest cave in. The sternum caves in with parts of rib 3, 4, 5, like a floating fragment. And then people notice something's wrong. Because when I give and there's no compliance to the sternal wall, and it just gives, imagine what would happen if I had a sternal I.O. doing this. So, for cardiac arrest, I don't recommend this. If you think you really need to do this in certain people's protocols for trauma, for access, and the patient most likely not getting a thoracotomy, you may get away with it in pre-hospital, right? You're trying to give blood, trying to give fluid, which should be really red stuff, CXA, calcium, right? The lethal diamond. And then when you get to the ED, you can consider the thoracotomies or not, and the different versions, right? And definitely if you have a sternal I.O., it's going to be kind of hard if you were doing mesosternotomy, right? But luckily that's not the type we usually do in the trauma setting for traumatic arrest. So they may be advocates for this, but I have many arguments, especially against the use of a sternal I.O. for cardiac arrest. You guys understand? It will interfere with the CPR, or it may become a floating fragment from doing normal good CPR. And some people have blamed me for causing too much trauma. I just did good CPR and the patient's body gave. Right? It's a traumatic event to this patient to save a life. And I may have made ensured that the patient died by cardiac contusion or bilateral pneumothorax by Torres by doing a good, great CPR. Don't blame me. The body gave, and we just defined what God was trying to do. All right, external I.O.s, vaya con Dios with those. Not for me. That's my opinion.